Jesus was rejected on every single level in his life, and yet he stayed true and he kept speaking truth to power.
Welcome to season 2 of Religious Rejects.
Woohoo!
Yay, we made it.
We made it.
We made it. And here we are. And this season's going to be a little bit different.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about historic religious rejects and let you in on some of their secrets, what happened, and why they were rejected by religion, and what we can learn from them, which I'm excited about.
Yeah, we have a lot in store for you over the next several episodes. Excited about that. Today, we are starting with the original reject.
Yes.
Jesus himself.
Jesus, that's right.
Yeah. So let's be clear, the original reject within the history of Christianity, since technically there have been other rejects in the history of the world. However, we do trace the beginning of our religion, Christianity, to Jesus. So he there's a lot of things that happen to him that get repeated. Wouldn't you say? Isn't it kind of wild over time?
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Yes, this whole thing, doing all this research, what you find is that there's just this continual theme that just keeps coming, and we're living it now as well.
We are.
Just crazy.
It's really insane. So welcome back. We're glad you're here, and let's get into it.
Let's go.
You know, Jesus was a poor man in an area of Judea called Nazareth. Some of the Gospels say he was born in Bethlehem. Most people say, though, he probably was from Nazareth. Most people today think he started his public ministry around age 30, and by age 33, he was already dead. He had been executed by the Roman Empire.
Right.
So he lived a very impactful life in a very short amount of time. The time of his public ministry was only about 3 years. So we're going to talk about different facets of his rejection. It was kind of wild to go back and reread some of these stories that we have from and I was like, oh my goodness, I did not remember this was in the gospel.
Right.
It's so funny.
Yeah.
So we're going to dive into how he was rejected by his family, by his community, by religious authorities, and ultimately by then the Roman Empire and the leaders of the Roman Empire in his area. So let's just start off with being rejected at the very beginning of his public ministry, the very beginning of his life. So we have a story, and the story that I'm referring to particularly, I'm going to talk about the one from the Gospel of Mark. But he returns to his hometown, which is Nazareth. You know, he's been out and about a little bit. He's starting to get, some fame and all that. But he comes home, and it's like, people are like, oh, wait, isn't that isn't that Jesus? Isn't that Mary's son? And wait a second, the one with all the brothers and the sisters who live right down the street kind of a thing, it's like they're just not buying it.
Right.
They just don't believe that he's actually out there teaching people and healing people.
Right. I always picture it like, his second grade teacher is like, oh, no, no. He's not the Messiah, let me tell you. But, who
does he think he is? Yeah. And so he tells his followers at this point, when they've all sort of been watching, because they're following him and being like, wait a second, this is Jesus. This is Jesus. And you are just ignoring him? Like, what are you doing, And so what he tells his followers, his disciples, he says, no prophet is disrespected except on his home turf and among his relatives and at home.
Yeah.
And so that's basically what happens the first time he goes home. Now, there's another time when he's rejected by his family. And this one I thought was really, it just got me. It's a very sad story in a lot of ways to me, because it also, I think, taps into how people feel when their religious beliefs change and shift from that of their family. At one point, they're all out. He's doing his ministry stuff. He's teaching people. He's healing them, all this stuff. There's a big crowd of people. There's such a huge crowd that people are worried about it. So his family finds out about it, and they come and they think that he's out of his mind. That's literally what it says in the Gospel of Mark, is that they came to try and get him because they thought he was out of his mind. They thought he was crazy.
Which I remember this, and you know, it is funny that we don't really talk about this too much. Like, this is not one of those big sermon that you hear all the time. You know, there's always, especially in Christianity, you hear the same sermons all the time sometimes. This one never really gets touched. And I wonder if it's, you know, first of all, why did they think he was insane? Like, what does that say about Mary? Did she forget everything that happened to her? How does that work? Or did she, like many of us, receive something from God, but then pictured it in her own mind how it would go? Therefore, when it did start to go, she was a little bit more like, yeah, no, that's not what God meant. That's not what you're supposed to be doing. And you need to get back over here because this is crazy.
Well, and to be fair, I mean, Jesus was old at that point. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
30 was, you know, pretty...
And
that was like middle-aged at that time, because, you know, if you survived childhood,
right,
you know, people didn't live as long as they do now because of all sorts of reasons. So yeah, it's a difficult story. So they think he's crazy. And then later on, at another point, you know, in the story, it sounds like it's just maybe a day or so later, a couple days later, they all come back, and he's with his group of people. He's again teaching in a crowd. There's lots going on. And people come to him and say, hey, your family's out there, your mom, your brothers, and your sisters, you know? And he basically is like, what are you talking about? That's basically, he's saying, that's not my family. And then he says, whoever does the will of God is my brother and sister and mother. And so he then rejects his family, which is also a big deal. Now, this one I've always remembered. I remembered. And, you know, it sort of makes sense in the context of teaching disciples and, you know, who's in the family of God and all this kind of stuff, you know. And so I guess it sort of made more sense in that respect. But when you see it paired with, first they try to take him away, like, oh my gosh, he's so embarrassing. My brother is out in public claiming all this stuff. Oh my gosh, he's so embarrassing. You know what I mean? It's like, Mom, would you make him stop? You know? So you have that story where they think he's insane. And then now he's rejecting them back and saying, no, you all, whoever is doing the will of God is my mother and brother and sister.
Right. To your point, we have heard this one before, and I think it's a favorite of pastors to use to kind of explain that the church should be your number one, you know, we're your family now, kind of a thing, which it can get manipulative. Not that Jesus was,
that can be sort of cultish with churches. Yeah.
So you have to be careful on that one too, because that has been used. I do think, I keep going back to that whole family thing, that they thought he was crazy. And then, you know, then you see later that his mother apparently didn't think he was crazy because she wanted him to make wine at a wedding. So which one was it? So we're just highlighting another biblical contradiction. But we will just leave that there.
And everyone gets to decide, how are you going to make sense of that? It's not just up to us to figure that out. So that's the stories about his family. So then let's talk about some of the things that come up in the religious sphere with religious leaders. Next, we have this whole section, there's these incidents that are shared in the Gospels where Jesus really has these interactions with religious authorities, where he is not doing what is expected of him by those religious authorities.
Right.
And it's sort of this big collision course that you see building, and there's this tension that builds throughout the Gospels and then ultimately culminates in his trial. Some of the examples of things like this that happen are, there's a day when he's out with his disciples, and it's a Sabbath, and I was going to say it's a Sunday. It wasn't it's a Sabbath. And his disciples grab some grains of wheat or whatever from a field they're walking through. And some of the people are like, oh my gosh, he's eating on the Sabbath. They're picking grain on the Sabbath, and that's a no-no, and that's not okay. So this is one of the ways that you start seeing this this very different philosophy of Jesus, where he's saying that humanity is made for the Sabbath and the Sabbath isn't made for humanity. So it's kind of, honestly, it kind of reminds me a little bit about your theory about your
my
stove.
Cookware.
Yes.
Yeah, my cookware and my stove. Yes. For those wondering, what the heck is she talking about? How does Jesus relate to cookware? I worked at a cookware store for a number of years.
Yeah.
And there would be times when people would come in and they would want their cookware to be absolutely pristine, and I get it. When you want to buy something new, you want to make sure it's new, right?
Mm-hmm.
But every once in a while we'd have deals because they would have a scratch in it, and people would just be like, oh, but it's got a scratch in it. Don't you have another one? And I'd be like, okay, here's the thing, because then they would get so like, I want it to be perfect. And I was like, okay, cookware, should be working for you. Meaning you want the scratches, you want the stains. That means you've had some amazing dinners.
Yes.
If you are spending all this time cleaning and keeping your cookware pristine, then you are working for the cookware or the stove. Like the stove, I can't tell you how many people were like, but it's going to scratch my stove. And it's like, yeah, good. That means you used it. But no, I'm not I'm in the minority, unfortunately, with that. But yeah, I am somebody that believes that, things should, I don't want to work for my things. I want my things to represent and bring beauty to me.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of thing. The Sabbath was supposed to be for people. We were not supposed to work for the Sabbath, or in this case, religion. And I think that's it's a very minor thing that he is saying there. But when you really blow it up, you really see how many religions take that mindset that you need to do all of this to preserve the religion, forgetting that religion is supposed to bring us closer to God. It's supposed to work for us.
Yeah.
And if it's not working for us, why are we doing this?
Yeah, exactly. So we have that interaction about the Sabbath. Then there's another time, there's multiple times in the Gospels where Jesus gets in a lot of trouble because of his eating and drinking, and so he eats a lot apparently with tax collectors and sinners, and then he's kind of getting a reputation as a drunk sometimes too.
God bless him.
I know.
Yeah. God bless.
And so he's breaking these social conventions of who to eat with and what you drink. And so there were these ideas about people who were collecting the taxes on behalf of the Roman Empire that was going against the Jewish people, and how they were being disloyal to their own people by receiving the tax on behalf of this foreign empire. And so Jesus shouldn't be sitting and eating with them, And so you have this reputation that starts being spread, and the word spreads. He's this glutton and he's this drunkard, and he eats too much and he drinks too much. And I'm like, well, that sounds like
the wrong sort of people.
with the wrong sort of people. And I'm like, that sounds like my kind of guy.
Yeah. I know.
And at one point, of course, there's the famous line from Jesus, well, I didn't come for the righteous, I came for the sinners. And so, that's where he's talking about, who really needs what I'm bringing? Who needs this teaching? It's the people who are, in my mind, the way I'm hearing it, the rejects of the religion.
Right.
Those who are not being included in various ways. So
yeah, he came for the rejects. Thank God.
I know, right?
Yeah. But I do think it's funny that doesn't Jesus talk for a minute about the fact that, okay, wait, I eat and drink too much and I'm wrong, but then John the Baptist only ate locusts and honey and y'all thought he was weird. So like, what do you want from us?
Right.
It's like, no, you just got to be normal, dude.
Yeah. Things didn't turn out well for John the Baptist, though, either. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was not a good time for people who were leading new religious movements or like a revival movement within Judaism. No, it was not great. So he's got this collision course and this tension that starts building in the Gospels with the religious authorities because he's not doing things the way that they think he should be doing or whatever. And so that, of course, builds until, he gets turned in by one of his disciples, Judas.
Yeah.
The guard from the temple, they come and they arrest Jesus and he goes to trial. And that's, of course, the big famous trial at the end of the Gospels where he's brought before Pontius Pilate and all of this stuff. Ultimately, what we see then here is he's rejected through that trial, not just by his own people who were involved in this whole movement to get him arrested and brought before Pontius Pilate, but he's rejected by one of his disciples, Judas. He's rejected by his own people and his community. He's rejected by the religious authorities who are saying, he's saying he's a king and a Messiah, and he's not. And then ultimately, the prefect of the area, who was the representative of the Roman Empire, Pontius Pilate, he ultimately agrees with them all and agrees to crucify him. And so Jesus is crucified as a criminal, and it's such an obvious thing to say, but it is the ultimate rejection, obviously.
Right.
On all of these levels of his community, his family, his religious groups, and then also the political, the governmental authorities.
Right. And let's not forget, one of the big reasons, at least in my mind, that Jesus had to die is because he kept speaking truth to power. He was what we would call today a disruptor.
Yeah. Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And he would keep looking at these religious leaders and asking them questions and trying to get them to really see their own hypocrisy in things. And I'm sure a lot of those leaders were getting very uncomfortable. And not only that, but the rejects that Jesus was probably really speaking to they are also now going, why do you do that, man? What's going on here?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So he's highlighting all of these areas where these religious leaders are supposed to be helping. One of my, I don't want to say favorite verses. I think that's not the right terminology, but one of the most impactful verses to me, especially as a leader and when I was pastoring, was Matthew 23:2, when he talks about the Pharisees will do whatever they do to teach you, and they want you to follow it, but they don't follow it. And what they'll say is, what he says in verse 4 is that they tie up heavy burdens hard to bear and they lay them on the shoulders of others, but they themselves are unwilling to lift a finger to move them. They do all their deeds to be seen by others, for they make their phylacteries broad and their fringes long. They love to have the place of honor at banquets and the best seats in the synagogues, and to be greeted with respect in the marketplaces, and to have people call them rabbi. I mean, these are the things that Jesus is teaching his band of rejects, and it's getting back to the Pharisees, and there may be some Pharisees standing on the outskirts listening, but that idea especially about, and we talked about this, are you working for your religion or is your religion working for you? So you know you're working for your religion where you just cannot catch a break, and you have a list of have tos and I must and I can't and don'ts, and that's when you're working for religion. Religion should be freeing.
Yeah.
And the moment it's not, you really need to take a look at it. And the moment it's not, and then if you go to talk to your leader about why is this not freeing, if they start to tell you to do more, then that is your classic. They're unwilling to help you out, to lift any of the burdens.
Yeah.
They're just going to keep pressing you down and pressing you down.
And I think we still see so much of what Jesus was fighting against in religious groups today, where leaders say one thing and do not either do another, or they do not do what they say that everyone else is supposed to be doing. Sometimes they do it out in public, and sometimes it's behind closed doors, and then everybody finds out about it sooner or later somehow. And so the hypocrisy piece is definitely something we still see so much of. And
our president going on TV just to read a Bible verse that apparently nobody walked him through because he was mispronouncing lots of things. So it looked like the show that it was.
yeah.
And there was nothing meaningful. And the rest of Matthew is when he's, the woes. He says, Jesus starts to do the woes. I love me the woes. It's like, and woe to you, and woe to you. It's like early Oprah, and you get a woe, and you get a woe. Everybody gets a woe. My favorite woe, though, is the one where it says, you look beautiful on the outside. You've cleaned everything up on the outside, but, that inside is just nasty.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that's kind of all I see now with some of these pastors today that want to, they look good, but then, inside they want war. They want people out of our country. They want women prosecuted because they may have been raped and got pregnant and had an abortion. We're going to prosecute these victims. It's just where? Again, let's just keep putting on all of this weight on them so they can't stand up. We're not freeing anybody.
No. And it's a, so much of what Jesus talked about is that change of heart.
Yeah.
And really that, that idea of compassion and care. And the person that was standing right in front of him was more important to him than some sort of a rule or a convention, like a social convention or social status even. So, it didn't matter to him that someone wasn't popular or that they were a tax collector and so they were scorned by everyone else in the community. He saw the person, and that was what was so important. And that's also, I think, a powerful message from all of this. So then, of course, at the end of the Gospels, Jesus is convicted, and then there's the, whole travel. He has to take his cross and carry it to the place of crucifixion, Golgotha, and then he's crucified and he dies. And this is another place where, circling back to the family, there's sort of some disagreement in the Gospels. In one gospel, Mary's not there. In other ones, she's there. So, it's hard to know if she actually was there or not. But I personally like to think that she actually was there, that she was there for him at the end, that there was some sort of a reconciliation. But that's probably just me wanting a happy ending.
Yeah, I mean, as a mother, I don't know if I could have been there. You know what I mean? I don't think I could have watched my child. I mean, I know, obviously, if it was happening.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I know.
That's
I don't know
horrific. It's
either.
horrific to even think about
Yeah,
it.
it is. It is.
Watch your child,
Yeah.
Anyway.
So these are all the ways that Jesus was rejected by his community in his hometown, by people in his religious groups, and then ultimately by the governmental authorities. I mean, Jesus was rejected on every single level in his life, and yet he stayed true and he kept speaking truth to power, as you said.
He did.
And he did not once take up arms. He never once fought back physically. He would talk to people and he would challenge them, but there was no violence.
No.
There was no violence ever. And I think that's a huge thing that so many Christians, especially today in the United States, it's like, I don't know, it's like they've never heard this about Jesus before. Something. It's like
I think they heard it. They just, again, they would rather go with power.
Yeah.
Power is corrupting, and
Yep.
it's enticing, and it's desirable, and it means you can change. And this idea that somehow once you have the power, then you can do things for God instead of a man with no power who changed the world. Like, again, it's just crazy.
And ultimately, Jesus was born into a Jewish family. He lived his life as a Jewish man, and he died as a Jewish man. I don't think Jesus was here to try to create a new religion.
I don't either.
I think what happened is that there was a collision course, and there's a lot of things that went into this, but ultimately, all of the things that he stood for over time, after his death and resurrection, depending on how you believe all that stuff, that's when this, Judaism then was kind of like, they got to a point where it's like, nope, that movement is not part of who we are. They are not Jewish. And then there was the split between Judaism and Christianity, and that's when Christianity became its own religion. And then for centuries, even till today, it's like Christians forget that that's where they came from.
I know.
And so there's all this anti-Semitism. So it's just, I don't know. It's so bizarre to me. I'm like, whenever there's all this anti-Semitic stuff coming out of the mouths of Christians, I'm like, you remember Jesus is a Jew, right?
Yeah.
Like, did you miss that in your Bible?
They don't count that.
They don't.
Yeah. But I love to tell people that, because then they go, what?
Yeah.
And you're like, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I love telling people Jesus didn't celebrate Christmas.
You know what? That's so true. Yes. Yeah.
He still did Hanukkah. Anyway. Some of the fun things I had as a pastor.
Yes.
Just for fun.
So these are all of the ways that Jesus suffered rejection, and yet he stayed true to who he was through his ministry and through his life, and even to the point of being killed. And I think that's such a profound statement to us today, with all of the things that people are facing and the fear that people have living in the United States today and what's going on in our political situation, for whom the Jesus story is a meaningful expression of a religious belief or, religion. It can bring comfort. Not that it necessarily can bring comfort, because he ultimately had a really hard life, but you can remain who you are and true to who you are, and you can speak truth to power. And he had an impact far beyond his own lifetime. And so I don't know. I mean, to me, that's a powerful story for us right now as we're in our context in the United States in 2026.
Yes, agreed. The adulterous woman standing before him, who's supposed to be, according to the law, stoned. And all he does is he just kind of leans down, and I personally think he drew a line in the sand.
Yes, I love it.
Which I know probably wasn't a phrase back
Right,
then,
yeah.
but it's just, I mean, symbolically, that's what he did. He just drew that line in the sand and said, go ahead. Which one of you haven't sinned? You can start.
Yeah.
I'll wait. I just,
And they all turned and walked away, and
Yeah.
nobody could throw a rock because, of course, they knew that they all had sinned.
right. And if we could all start seeing each other like that, and not that I don't want all of us to see that we're all sinners, because I think that there's a very negative context with
Right.
that, but just to see that we're all human,
Yeah.
and that we're all going to make choices that will benefit ourselves over somebody else. But if we come back around, then let's work together.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm too Pollyanna. I know I am, but that's okay.
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously, I always want a happy ending. So,
Well, yeah.
I want
Yeah.
Mary to be there at the cross, when Jesus is dying, even though that's really horrific for her and all that. So, anyway, I know.
Yeah.
I get it.
Thanks for tuning in. Up next, will the rejects keep, rethink, or reject today's topic? Stay with us.
So, as we think about, I guess you can think of it as like Jesus being the OG religious reject in the history of Christianity. What are you keeping, rethinking, or rejecting of who he was and
Yeah.
all of what he brought in his ministry?
I think I've always been drawn to that verse that I talked about the whole religious teachers just weighing on people. I obviously not only do I want to keep that, I want to embody that.
Yeah.
I want to be setting people free, setting the captives free, and letting them know that no, don't listen to what religion told you. God loves you. Period. And a lot of that comes from the original sin mindset, and I get it. But yeah, I want to banish and reject all of that. So I embody this whole, lifting your burdens, drawing the line in the sand, whatever it is, that type of mindset is really important to me.
Yeah. And I think for me, I think the idea of Jesus being a reject has been a very deep comfort for me in my own spiritual journey because, I never really fit in when I was a kid. I was the weirdo. People thought I was just extra, too much. I'm serious. Like, oh my gosh, you have no idea. People they just didn't understand me. And, and then of course I came out and, so all of who I was didn't fit in religious community. I've struggled with my own family over the years. Now I'm in a good place with my family. But there were a lot of struggles along, so there's a lot about Jesus' story that really resonates with me. I am not saying that I'm Jesus. Let me be really clear here. However, the piece about it where he had an understanding of, he had a deep relationship with spirit, and that led him into a life that he claimed who he was, but other people around him couldn't accept that. And I think that's the part that has really resonated with me, as well as how he himself reached out to people who were on the margins, who were on the edges, who were rejected, and that he didn't come for the people who have it all together.
Right.
He came for those people who are kind of a mess, and that also resonates with me. So those are pieces that I think have been very central to my own journey within the Christian tradition.
And I almost want to, I don't want to say clarify, but it just occurred to me that as you said that, when Jesus has come not for those that are, put together, but for those that are a mess, it's almost as if it's not that we're a mess, but it's just we understand that we have a need for something else. We have that understanding that our own humanity can fail us, and we need something greater. The people that have it all together obviously don't, but they don't think they need anything.
Yeah,
And
that's true.
And I feel like some people might not think that they're a mess, but still have that but I know that I need I know that I want to be closer to God. And I think that's kind of, if you seek him, you will find him kind of a thing. And just the knowing that there is a need for him. I like that part. That makes me happy.
Yeah.
That makes me happy.
So as always, we want to hear what your thoughts are and to see what other things you might have thought about in relation to this topic. We'd love to hear from you. You can find us at religiousrejects.com. We'd also love to hear famous religious rejects that you would like to hear more about. So,
all right. Thank you so much for joining us. Join us again. Bye-bye.